Good morning. Good to see you guys. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. And today, as you can see on my title, we're going to talk about what areas of your weaknesses do your kids need to know about. Good morning, Yolanda. Glad you're here. So, I know some parents are like, what do you mean? What area of my weakness do my kids need to know about? Well, back in the day, when we were raising our kids, they would get into such arguments with each other. Arguments about faults and failings, and I can't believe you're so lazy, and oh my gosh, you are so negative, and why are you such an angry person? And everybody would just go back and forth and back and forth. And, of course, they would look at someone else's thing and, oh gosh, that was just awful. So much worse than whatever their challenge was. And I would hear them just fussing sometimes in the house at each other about whatever their issues were. And finally, I was like, okay, how can we deal with this? And so I decided to have a weakness summit. Yes. I guess you're saying, what in the world is that? Well, what we did was I actually called a family meeting and everyone was in attendance. My husband, myself, and the 3 children. And we actually sat down and we talked about how every one of us had weaknesses. And that it is so easy to look at what other people do and somehow minimize our own stuff. And that's just human nature, but we were going to work on that in our family. And so I said, I made a very straightforward statement. I said, the truth is, everyone sitting at this table here at our summit has a weakness, including mommy and daddy, right? And the kids were like, yeah. I was like, and we can name what each person's area of weakness or struggle is, can't we? And they were like, yeah. Well, you know what? That's a great question, Yolanda. She said, what if your husband doesn't want to admit his weakness? Well, then you sit down with the ones who do. And so I would just sit down with the kids and have this conversation. And I was able, in that conversation, I was able to talk to them and let them know, I know that I can be angry at times and very controlling. And that is an area that I'm working on. And you guys already know that. I'm not telling you anything that you don't know. But let's go around the table and be honest about our stuff. And so we went around the table and everybody kind of said, okay, this is the area I need to work on. And so as we began to talk to each other, Yolanda, you said, I can too. I hear you, honey. And so as we began to talk to each other, we began to actually create a starting place for us to acknowledge that everybody has something that they're working on and that we don't have to get all bent out of shape when somebody else is doing something that we would never do. And so at that weakness summit, we established that we're all, we all are sinners. We all have issues. We all have challenges, but that we were all going to commit to getting better at them, and that we were not going to overemphasize those weaknesses of others because we were going to remember that we had weaknesses ourselves. And so when I ask you the question of what weaknesses do your kids need to know about, sometimes you just need to be honest with them. But you have to be able to look at yourself, and you have to be able to say, I'm really struggling in this area. I've gotten better at it, but I've still got a long way to go. And that goes so far with the kids when they realize that, and that you as a human being, as a parent, are human, and that you make mistakes and you make wrong choices at times as well. I found that it just kind of kind of evened things out. It gave them a better ear to hear because I wasn't coming from a position of superiority and I'm the parent and you do everything I say and I never make mistakes, or at least I never acknowledge that I make them. But when I would mess up, when I would go ahead and fess up, I learned how to apologize. I'm telling you, I had to learn because it was not something that came naturally for me. It was a very humbling thing to admit to a child I was wrong and to ask for forgiveness. And as I was asking for forgiveness, to remember to ask God to help me to really begin to move away from that behavior, because continuing to say I'm sorry and continuing to do the same thing, after a while, people don't even hear you anymore. So I knew when I said, oh man, I was wrong, could you please forgive me? I had to be coming up with some prayer strategies. I had to be asking God to give me the strength to not do that anymore. And that helped a lot. So as we began to acknowledge each other's weaknesses, we were able to actually accept the weakness in ourselves, continue to work on it, but allow other people to be human and to not expect perfection from each other. It created a whole new level of peace in our home because we didn't have to be perfect. And we had people around us who understood, I can start talking about your stuff, but the truth is I have some stuff too. And so that was one of the ways that we were able to begin to create this environment where people were not so judgmental towards each other, but beginning to speak about, and we still had to talk about stuff. We had some laziness issues. We had some anger issues. We had some negativity issues. We had some bullheadedness issues. We had some pride issues. We still had to, as parents, teach and train and help with those things with the kids. But we were able to do it, I as a parent, because I tended to kind of be, in control, always wanting to be in control, tended to kind of be judgmental. It helped me to begin to pull back and say, as I dealt with their stuff, to say, I got stuff too. And then we would have to tell them sometimes, listen, now God made us parents, but he didn't make us perfect. And if he could make us as imperfect as we are, parents over you, then he must trust that the plan he's put in place will be enough to get you grown and be able to find the purpose that he has for you. He can take us broken and just human as we are and still get the job done. Because it's us plus him and his power that makes the difference. And so the strategy that I'm talking about is in my book, Star Finder, and it's strategy number 2. I want to read it to you. It says, what areas of weakness do you need to talk about with your children so they will be more open to your help? This means your struggles. Share with discretion and theirs. How can you create a safe environment in your home that celebrates strengths and is honest about challenges so that your children will begin to see the areas in their own lives that are special and the areas in their lives that need to be improved? And it was a very interesting thing. I found that when we were willing to acknowledge our own weakness, somehow it gave them permission to acknowledge theirs. And it just opened up this whole new area in our life. Now, it was a process and it took time, for us to begin to work on it and work it through. But it was amazing the difference in the environment when I, as the mom, because I was home with them most of the day, was willing to acknowledge my stuff. Good morning, Rosalind. So being willing to say to the kids, you know what, this is an area that I'm struggling in. that as long as it's appropriate for them to know, and different ages need different information. But I found that when they realized that I didn't think I was perfect, when they realized that I could acknowledge when I was wrong, it helped them actually to receive my counsel more, because I was coming from a place of shared humanity with them. Like, yeah, I'm struggling with this, you're struggling with that, Dad's struggling with that. We're all trying to allow God to make us into what he wants us to be. But Lord knows, mommy just misses the mark on some days, and some days more than other days. And so when it was time for me to say, okay, now, what about for them? They were able to hear me because I never pretended like I didn't have problems. And so my book, Starfinder, is one that I'm getting ready to do a book launch for. And if you'd like to just comment and support me and hear more strategies. So the book tag is Discovering Strategies to Help Your Struggling Student Win. But the truth is, out of the 12 strategies that are in this book, 10 of them are just about foundational things that a parent needs to have in place to make sure their child can be successful, not just in their academics, but in life. And so that that launch is coming up on February 17th from 11 to 1. You can go to my site, Anita Gibson, actually on Facebook, go to my page, Anita Gibson EDU. And if you would like to join us, there is a Eventbrite post there that you can sign up. My name is Anita Gibson. Of course, you probably already know that by now. I am a coach, speaker, educational strategist, and author, of course, of the book, Starfinder. And I would love to see you guys at my book launch. If you want the details for location and all that kind of good stuff, it's there with the Eventbrite post. But remember, as you go this day, it's okay to be human. You don't have to be perfect to raise children that honor God and find their purpose. Have a fantastic day. I love you guys.